You know, looking back on this, it was crazy.
It feels like I'm skydiving when I text you. Rose petals on the floor outside your bedroom. Sunshine whenever you smile.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are returning, if you are new, make sure you hit the subscribe button. You don't want to miss the things coming on this channel. My name is Ashley McGrew. Today I'm going to get into the story of my emergency C-section / preeclampsia experience with my oldest son. So let's go back. 2011. So 2011, I was a senior in high school. I actually had plans to join the Air Force. I have said in videos before that I always struggled with. Hold up, I gotta put my hair up. This is gonna bug me. Okay, so back 2011, I was actually training to go into the Air Force. Like I've said in other videos, I've always kind of struggled with my weight, especially throughout like middle school and high school. So I had, I think, 20 pounds to lose to be at my, because you're supposed to be at a certain weight for your height. So I think I had 20 pounds to lose. A close friend of mine, she was actively enrolled. She was going to their little meetings that they had, so I would go with her even though I wasn't enrolled, just to kind of get the experience and feel a part of everything. I was doing that and I ended up meeting this guy through a family friend. He was, I think, 23 at the time, so I was drinking a lot, partying over there at his place, stuff like that. And this is also while I was training for the Air Force, so you know, drinking, drugs, things like that don't really go well with trying to get your body fit and toned. Kind of stopped focusing on that, was all infatuated with him. About May 2011, we got together and I graduated June 2011. So that's how close it was to the end of me graduating. And, you know, as soon as I graduated, turned 18 in July, I could have been off to the Air Force. Towards the end of August is when we conceived our son. So I had just turned 18 in July. I was newly an adult and just became pregnant with my son. Obviously had to put all of my other plans on hold. I decided to keep the baby. Our relationship was going well, even though it was still so new in the relationship. I was young and dumb. You know, didn't really know what a honeymoon phase was or whatever. Throughout my pregnancy, we stayed together through the whole time. I was actually working 2 different jobs throughout my pregnancy. I worked at an after-school program. I was basically just like a teacher's aide at the time. And then I worked during the day, I believe 3 or 4 days of the week at Quiznos at a sandwich shop. So I would go in 9 o'clock in the morning, work at the sandwich shop until 2, and then have to make the commute out to the other job, to the school. Took about 10-15 minutes. I started there at 2:15. So I'd literally get off at 2 from the sandwich shop, drive to my other job to start at 2:15. My supervisor was amazing. We had a lot of talks with each other about, you know, being young and becoming a parent and just being a hustler, basically, because I had worked multiple jobs since I could start working. It was just something that I did. I was on my feet all the time throughout this whole pregnancy. I was a young mom, and most of you know that preeclampsia either happens when you're really young or really old in age when you become pregnant. It could also have to do with the other parent. It could have to do with the dad and like their genes, basically like their body chemistry mixing with yours, and it just doesn't like go right. My grandma actually ended up passing away during this pregnancy. I had just found out that I was having a boy. I didn't tell a lot of people at all really for a long time until I found out it was a boy, is pretty much when I posted it on Facebook, when I started telling people. And my grandma was really sick. I didn't even get to tell her that I was pregnant, that I was having a boy. It really sucked. So I started having high blood pressure shortly after she passed away. In my, weekly, bi-weekly visits to the doctor, I was having high blood pressure. They kind of just resulted that to, well, your grandma just passed away. It's kind of, expected. Different emotions going on, whatever. They chopped it up to, oh, it's just, I just spit. Excuse me. Basically, I was just having a lot of stress because my grandma just passed away and, the hormones going through my body. Well, the high blood pressure continued for a good probably 5 or 6 weeks. And then they were finally like, okay, this isn't normal, that it's getting this high. Let's check something. Also, at that appointment where they said that, I had just had my baby shower the weekend prior. And on the day of my baby shower that morning, I started having really bad chest pains and pains in my rib cage and my back. And I had my gallbladder out when I was 16 years old. That is the only feeling that I can relate it to. And if you've never had gallbladder pains or had your gallbladder taken out or had gallstones or anything like that, you probably will have no idea what I'm talking about. But trust me, it's fucking painful. Probably an hour before everyone started showing up after setting up and everything. And actually, the supervisor at the school district I was working for ended up letting me host my baby shower at her house. I had the baby shower, and literally an hour or two before guests started showing up, I was getting those pains. I tried to sit down, it was kind of hard to breathe, and it just wasn't helping. I tried to eat a little something, and then they kind of subsided and went away. So when I went to the doctors, I believe that Monday or Tuesday is when they said, hey, okay, yeah, blood pressure's still high, now you've got these pains, let's do this test for this. So they basically told me they were going to test me for preeclampsia. And what I had to do was take this big, bright orange bottle, probably about this big, kind of square, had a big old white cap on the top. And basically they told me that I had to pee into this container for the next 24 or 48 hours. I'm pretty sure it was 48 hours. I didn't even make it 12, you guys. I went home to go and do this and was like, I'm just going to start fresh the next morning. So went home, went to sleep, started the next morning fresh, was doing it fine. I was peeing in a cup and then dumping it into the container, and it was really gross because you had to keep the container in the fridge. That's just not, ugh. Around evening time, me and my partner at the time have dinner, go to bed, everything's fine. I have work in the morning at the sandwich shop, and then I have, the school district after school position in the afternoon. So I have to go to work the next day. We get in bed at a decent time. I probably wake up, I honestly don't even remember. It was late night, early morning hours. I want to say probably more early morning hours, probably around 3 or 4 in the morning. I woke up to those same pains. What had helped before is I was, I just sat down, breathed slowly, breathed deeply, and I had a snack and I was okay. So I went to the fridge. I got some carrots, I think, and I went and sat on the couch and I started nibbling on the carrots, and it was getting worse. It was getting worse and it was getting worse, and I was just trying to walk around, and it was just getting worse. And then I started having these worse pains, there was a tightening in my stomach. It was just hard to explain. So I wake up my partner and I'm telling him look, I think I need to go to the hospital. I'm having the same pains from the weekend, and he doesn't have a license. He drove my car to the hospital. Thankfully, we were only a couple blocks away from the hospital at the time. So I went to the hospital. Mind you, I just had an appointment day or two prior till. They get me all hooked up to the machine, start testing everything, and I'm having contractions. I don't think I was in labor, but I was having contractions. They called the doctor in there. None of the midwives or nurses were there, but they called the doctor in. Her name was Dr. Crabtree. She was amazing. She was the best at being able to keep me calm and handle the situation and just everything. But she basically told me that they would have to give me steroid shots just because of how far along I was. I was 33 weeks and 4 days when I went into the hospital. So because I wasn't far enough along, and his lungs were developing and his organs were getting strong, so in case he had to be delivered early, they had to give me these steroid shots for his lungs to be able to make sure that they were healthy and he was able to breathe on his own if he had to be delivered. So they gave me the first shot. It fucking hurt. It's not a good feeling. They put it in my lower back, right above my butt. It was just not a fun feeling. And then they basically told me that I was gonna have to be flown to a different hospital one in Santa Rosa or one in San Francisco, and I was given that option. And at this time I lived in Ukiah, which is an hour drive from Santa Rosa and about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive to San Francisco. Thinking of family members and things like that, what's the best, easiest way? So I said, okay, Santa Rosa, because the Ukiah hospital did not have a NICU or incubators for babies born under 34 weeks. Helicopter gets there, all my family gets there, let them know what's going on. They ended up giving me fentanyl, I think. I don't want to say it was, but I think it was, because it's not morphine, it's stronger than morphine. Someone let me know in the comments if you know if it's fentanyl or not. I'm not sure, but that shit made me so high. I had no cares in the world. It was crazy, and I had no idea what was going on. So, like, you know, they just gave this to me in my IV, and I don't know if I consented or not, to be honest. I have no idea what's going on. I'm freaking out. Like, I have nothing ready for this baby, and they're telling me that this baby might be born, like, now. Like, by the time I get to this other hospital. Get to the hospital, my family gets there probably an hour or two later, if that. I think, honestly, maybe like 45 minutes it took my mom to drive to the hospital, because they were there pretty shortly after I got there. And I got there, got settled in and everything. They were checking me regularly, see if I was dilating. They had EKG tests they were doing on me, all kinds of stuff. And that evening, the surgeon came in, and she actually told me that she wanted me to have a C-section. And I didn't want that. I really didn't want that. I was trying to do anything and everything possible to avoid having a C-section. So she brought up the idea of Cervidil, of trying to naturally induce me. So Cervidil is this little thing, probably about this big. It's this clear white thing that they put inside you, and it's supposed to soften your cervix and help start labor and start the whole process. So they put that in overnight. I said, yeah, you know, that's fine. It doesn't sound, there's no chemicals, there's no more shots going to me, you know, that's fine. So I tried to do that. Oh, I'm sorry I'm all over the place, but I also had to get 3 bags of blood platelets put into my body because I was losing so much blood. Just, my son was taking everything out of me, basically. He was draining everything. So they had to pump me with 3 bags of platelets this next morning before this could even happen. So they did the Cervidil overnight, woke up in the morning. They came and checked me probably around 9 o'clock in the morning, and it didn't do anything. So they told me to go to the bathroom, so I got up to go to the bathroom, went pee, and it literally looked like someone dumped a bottle of soy sauce in the toilet. I was peeing blood. So the doctor comes in and says, we need to take you for an emergency C-section right now. I start freaking out. I start crying. I'm asking all these questions. Come to find out, I can't even have anyone in the room with me. They're going to have to knock me out. I can't even be awake. I can't even, nothing. So my son was born, and I wasn't allowed to see him for 2 hours after he was born. They took me into the room, had to make sure that I was okay because I was basically dying. I was basically like on the verge of dying. That's why they had to do this emergency C-section. Thankfully, I had already gotten my 2nd dose of steroid shots the night before. As far as the steroids for his lungs should have been perfectly developed and fine. I had a due date of Mother's Day. I believe it was May 26th. And he was born on April 1st, 2012. So he came 6 weeks early. I had him at exactly 34 weeks. So it's not, you know, the worst case that you hear of a premature baby being born, but it was definitely scary. I was a new mom, and I had a baby already while I'm still a baby. Thankfully, my son's father was there. My mother was there. My stepsister was there. They were all able to be there after he was born, be with him. They wheeled me into the NICU after they made sure I was stabilized and okay. They wheeled me into the NICU while I was still on the hospital bed, and I was able to hold my son for the first time. I'll insert some pictures here. He was so tiny. He was 3 pounds, 14 ounces when he was born. And he spent 20 days in the NICU. He was off of breathing machines after the first 24 hours after he was born. He was off of the IV within the first 24 hours after he was born. The only thing that was preventing him from coming home was the feeding, was eating, because every time that he would eat, he would fall asleep. Whether that was breastfed, bottle fed, he would fall asleep. So he had a feeding tube in his nose that they would have to feed him through. And I tried breastfeeding. I really, really did. I tried so hard. I was in that NICU every single day, except for one day. There was one day I didn't come. It was an hour drive, an hour commute, and I had had a C-section. So they had to staple me up. I just needed to recover for that one day. I was traveling that hour to deliver breast milk every day to make sure that he had breast milk. And the one day that I didn't go, the one day, they didn't call me, they didn't notify me, they didn't anything. They had ran out of breast milk. So they gave my son 2-ounce bottles, I believe, of formula when I got there in the morning, that next morning. I was furious. I was so mad because he was already having an issue with eating. Okay, that's why he wasn't coming home. And then I wanted to breastfeed. I didn't want to give him formula at all. And then they introduced formula. So it's like, fuck, man, now I'm gonna have an even harder time. So I was pumping, got really hard. I wasn't able to produce enough milk for him basically after he turned 2 months old. The whole time he was in the hospital, he was able to stay on breast milk except for those 2 bottles that he did have. And then once he got home, just with the stress of being a new mom and school and work and everything, I wasn't able to produce enough milk for him. So he actually did have to start formula at about 2 months old. My hospital stay. So I had to stay in the hospital 3 days after he was born, and then I had to be released because I was fine. They had stapled me up from my C-section. The incision was healing, and I was okay. Basically, I was bleeding fine, and everything was going fine, so they sent me home. This hospital did not have a way for parents to stay in the hospital with their babies. They did, however, have a hotel at a discounted rate, parking passes. They did have some things, some, amenities for parents that had their babies in the NICU, but overall, it wasn't too accommodating. The nurses were great. They really were. And, 7 years later, my son is happy, healthy. He had a seasonal asthma little fit when he was about 2 to 4 when we were living in California. He doesn't have any more. He does require glasses, which is more genetic than anything. And other than that, no real health problems or concerns. You look at him now and you would not believe that this kid was born 6 weeks early. So that was my emergency C-section preeclampsia birth story. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. Make sure you subscribe to all of my social medias, follow me, DM me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.